right. Hello, everybody. This is Daniel Kanow with Breakthrough Your Art, and I have another great artist interview today with Telluride artist Sari Levy. Sari, welcome, and thank you so much for putting yourself out there to have a conversation about you and your artwork.
Thank you, Daniel. Thanks for doing this.
For sure. I want to say that I think we became more acquainted this last couple year, like maybe last year and a half. You took a painting class of mine, and then I got to see like your beautiful process as you were making these portraits, and I was just so kind of blown away by how quick and how like intuitive your artwork was for you, going for portraits of people, and then to see your work in full, like what you have around you and exhibitions you've had recently. It's really cool. I love the work that you do.
Thank you. Well, it was a lot of black coffee and painting in the middle of the night because we have a 4-year-old who doesn't sleep. So I got to just like go into the zone in the middle of the night, which was really fun. So thank you.
Yeah, I love like your kind of expressionistic modality of how you lay the paint out and really capturing that. It feels like an emotional quality. Would you say that's what you're after?
Yeah, I mean, I think that your personality always comes through in your art, and as my husband likes to say, that I kind of do the dishes about 80%. Like I'm not a very like extremely precise and exact person, so I kind of like that quality in my life, just like a little bit of chaos mixed in with the order.
I like that. That's a really good perspective there. Um, so tell me, like, what's your artistic background? Where did you come from with your art to get into portrait painting, which seems like that's your main modality?
Yeah, so I grew up in Boise, Idaho, in a public school system that really just completely, I would say, completely ignored art. And I always liked to draw as a kid, but I didn't have any kind of real outlets for it. And so I tell this story that the first day of college, we're all in like orientation, groups, and I like look at this like gorgeous guy, and he's from Boston, and I just kind of like immediately thought, oh, this guy's amazing. And they were asking us what we were going to major in, and I had no idea. And so they get to him, and he says in his Boston accent, that he's an artist. He's gone to art school, and he's going to do art. And then like they go to the other couple people, and by the time they got to me, I was like, I'm going to study art too. So I was like, I'm majoring in art, even though I'd never done anything aside from like draw. So I basically just took all this guy's classes because I was like in love with him. And it turned out that I had a little bit of a knack for it. And by the time I finished college, I had this minor in studio art. I still haven't taken as many art history classes as I feel like I should. I don't know enough about other artists, but I know that I like making art. And so that's kind of my background. And then I did a couple shows in my 20s. I did a few shows, I guess every decade I do a few shows, but I have always had kind of another like job on the side. So it goes in fits and starts, and I'll do commissions for people. And I feel like this year has been really fun because I've had a little bit more time to do a couple of shows and a bunch of commissions, and hopefully I can kind of keep that momentum going because I really love making art. And by the way, he is a very accomplished artist in New York now, so he's continued as well.
Good. What is his name?
Max Toth.
Okay, Max Toss. Is he also a portrait painter like yourself?
No, he paints a lot of figure. He does some figure drawing and painting, but he has like huge pieces, like 30 feet long. And he'll use like house paint, and I forget the name of the gallery he shows in New York. But it's really beautiful stuff. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
So what drew you to portraits, drawing and painting people?
Yeah. Well, I think a little bit of is what are you good at, right? Like I love to buy and look at other people's abstract art. Yours is beautiful. When I try to do it, it looks pretty terrible. I've tried doing landscapes, and I have to say I love looking at landscapes, but I'm just not good at them, and I don't find them interesting. And I find that looking at people's faces, sort of like the closer up you can get, like if you look at a Rembrandt and you look at the way he's like captured somebody's face. For me, that's just something I can look at for hours. I love looking at people's faces and their skin and the way the colors kind of play on skin and eyes. And because it's so interesting to me, I think that I'm drawn to paint it. So the short answer to your question is I really haven't done a whole lot else other than portraits. And when I try, it doesn't look so great. So I think I better stick to portraits.
When you're talking about kind of that close upness that you would get to really get into that pieces of art, and Rembrandt's a great example. Would you say that his work is, one of your biggest inspirations? The quality of work, the quantity of work, the modality, the expressionism?
I mean, in a million years of painting, if I could get close to what he does with light and with texture and expression, it would be a miracle. I just think he's kind of the master at, being able to perfect the portrait. Yeah. And I mean, there are other people too. Like I love Alice Neal's work and Lucian Freud and some of that looser,
Yeah.
expressionistic, work. And even like Toulouse-Lautrec, sort of the way he can capture the figure, or Egon Schiele, which is much more obviously like exaggerated kind of
Yeah.
feelings. I mean, I love all that stuff. I think that there are so many ways to be a master at portraits, and so there's a lot of people for me to kind of try to learn from.
Most definitely. I mean, you just named some pretty great heavy hitters, from Lucian Freud to Egon Schiele and Lautrec. They're
Yeah.
all very, very different. And when you look at Schiele and Freud, I mean, their work is so expressionistic, and like you can feel like the depth of that person's body or that face,
Right.
how they made the marks. And I see like on your paintings too that you like to kind of have that layering, and you like to have the marks show, and then you also like a lot of quiet space, kind of empty space. So tell me more about like that process. If you're working from a person who's sitting for you, or you're working from an image in front of you, how are you going from the beginning to where you're interpreting that person into starting a composition, and then starting to actually just kind of get into that flow of mark making?
Yeah. So, and you're sort of asking a couple different questions. One is a little bit about empty space, and another's a little bit about process. So,
Sure.
to answer the first one, I mean, I have spent a lot of time kind of trying to figure out. I'll show you an example. This is an example of a piece that I don't like, that's sort of in the trash heap, but I think it's instructive. So it's on canvas, it's oil, and it has, very little empty space, right? She's sitting in a chair, she's got her cat, and she's got kind of your traditional greenish background. And for me, it's just like, it's not working. I feel like there are people that can kind of do that better. And I've
So
really,
what is it for you that's not working on that piece?
yeah. It's just a picture of a person sitting. There isn't for me like that, like, oh, I'm zeroing in on like exactly what it is about her face that's interesting and is conveying some kind of emotion. It's just like you're kind of your eye doesn't know where to go. I know that some people can put in a background and it works and your eye knows where to go. I really gravitate. I think over the last few years, I started out 100% on canvas, and now I'm like 10% on canvas. I really love working on paper, and I use a heavy watercolor paper. And the reason is that I love just the way that the watercolor paper on its own looks. I think it's beautiful. It doesn't need a background. Whereas on canvas, I don't love the way like the white canvas looks. And even if you do like white paint on canvas, for some reason, it doesn't sort of, it's not as raw and as like interesting looking to me as if you can just see the texture of the paper. So what I've started doing is I'll work on a really heavy not cardstock, but like a heavy stock watercolor paper. So whatever like this stuff is, I'm sure it has a weight 400 series or whatever it is. And then I gesso it. And sometimes I forget to gesso it. And then I get to the end of the painting and I think, oh, shoot. And then what I've started doing, and I actually learned this in an art class that I took from AHA, is I'll take a bunch of photos and I'll try to use like natural light or north facing light. This one was taken outside. This is a commission. This is a friend's daughter, and I'll have it printed really large on black and white, in black and white. And then I'll cover the back of this. This is a duplicate, but I'll cover the back of this with this stuff called pan pastel, which is basically like graphite. And I'll do it with like a sponge, or like with mine are all wet right now. Like I'll just use something like that. And then I basically tape it onto the paper. And then I'll take like a pen or a pencil and I'll just kind of trace. And it feels like cheating because it probably is cheating. But I feel like I spent so many years drawing freeform from life that I earned the right to like cheat a little bit just to get like the exact proportion.
So it's doing like a transfer process for you.
Transferring it, because honestly, like it's such a bummer when you paint an entire painting and then you're like staring at it and you're like, something's wrong, like her eyes are different sizes, or just, and then you have to spend all this time correcting. So I do a little cheating with the transfer. And then once I do that, and I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out like what the best way is. Sometimes I'll have the person come sit for me and in the light, and I'll spend a lot of time trying to get their image from life. I think you get something from life that you can never get through a picture. And I've argued this with people, but like there's always something when you're looking at a photograph that's like not exactly right. Like too much orange is coming through, or too much green, or you're not seeing like the layers of the capillaries in the skin, or like whatever it is. But in the end, usually you do end up, or I do end up working somewhat from the picture. And honestly, my favorite way to do it is on my phone, because on my phone I can have it like right up to the picture, and I can zoom in so close, like I'm like staring at like their like pores, whatever. And then I just use oils and I just try to capture as much as I can, but I'll use really big brushes. I don't use really small brushes because I think that makes it feel too granular. So I'll try to use like a consistent size brush through the whole piece. I'll show you one example.
I'm glad you pulled that piece off, because I just want to say at the times that I've seen that displayed, I really love how you captured that painting. There's such a mystery to it.
Thank you. Well, sorry, it's glary. I can kind of tell that it's like reflecting back the camera, but this is a pretty decent sized brush that I did. Even the eyes, I kind of resisted the temptation to go in really tiny. And then I finished half of it and I thought, I really love the way this empty space looks in the paper. It's more interesting sometimes to leave a lot to the imagination. So that's the
I agree. That piece is so beautiful.
Thank you. I don't know if I can get it back up, so I'm not going to try.
Sure, that's fine.
And then I'll just pull this down, because this is sort of the unframed finished piece of the one that I was just showing, which is this girl's name is Isla. It's not exactly
your friend's daughter.
Yeah. It's just trying to bring you in to like her expression and just trying to pull you right in to like this little girl's
beautiful. It's beautiful. She's got a great name, Isla. My daughter's Ayla, so that's really nice.
Yeah.
This methodology where you're using the transfer system, when you're doing like the self-portrait you have to your side there, is that also done in the same way? Or if someone comes to sit for you, are you going from life, or are you going from like a photo you've already done, transfer system, and then they're sitting for you and you're incorporating the two together?
So the one that I did of myself, it's just in my garage with a mirror, because, I know that I'm less judgmental of myself. I think I get a little nervous when somebody's sitting in front of me that I'm not going to capture them very well. And in fact, the one of me, which is here, it's totally like lopsided. It doesn't look that much like me, but I just left it because I kind of liked the way it turned out. But yeah, that's just me kind of sitting in the garage and just like free form. Um,
Cool.
but usually I try to do a combination to, especially with the commissions, people want them to look realistic-ish, a
Yeah,
rectangle,
yeah.
and I don't
That
want
that
to.
self-portrait aspect of the free form, do you like that, of using the mirror and kind of interacting with yourself in the mirror? I've done a handful of self-portraits as well that are very expressionistic, and it's quite a process, you know? It's like you're looking into your soul, you're looking straight into your eyes, your facial expressions and everything, you know, capturing that. How is that for you going through that process?
Um, I think it's a really good exercise. When I was taking all these art classes in art school,
Yeah,
not art school, but like art classes in college, um, they were like, do 1,000 self-portraits because nobody's going to be as patient as you are with yourself. You can
right.
screw it up. You can make yourself look ugly. It doesn't matter. You're learning the face. You're learning
Yeah,
that there are 5 eyes across. You're learning that the nose is right in the middle of the face. You're learning that, just the proportions that the ears go from here to here, all these different things that you start to learn about that make it a lot faster when you're actually doing a sketch.
right. Are you sketching too? Do you do quick sketches and draw simultaneously or different times just to draw? Or are you
Yeah.
primarily a painter?
No, I do. I draw. I draw. Gosh, I wish I had it up.
It's okay.
Yeah, no, I love pen and ink. I'm not the best at it because I love color. I love using color. Um, but I just think some of the most beautiful art is pen and ink. So I aspire to just constantly be improving. And I think that pen and ink is a great or just like any kind of sketch, graphite, doesn't matter, is a great way to kind of learn the craft of drawing.
Yeah, excellent. And you also, it seems like you like to draw people you know, commissions for people you know, or friends, you know, which kind
I'll
of
take
like,
anything. I'll take anything, anybody. I don't have to know the person.
but you do, right? You do draw people in the community. You draw that must be a really nice experience because you're able to create this like memorable piece of art that represents someone important to you.
Totally. And like it's so gratifying walking into because I'll give it to them when I'm done usually. And it's gratifying if I go into this beautiful home and they have all this beautiful art and then I walk into a room and there's like my piece of them and they're enjoying it and able to. I think my goal with art is really like, okay, I want somebody to look at it and feel joy. Oh, this is my daughter. This is, and have that like connection that you feel when you see an image of somebody that you love.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So how has your experience been putting your art out into the world? There's the process of making the work for our own souls, for our inner need to create work. And then there's also showing work and putting ourselves out there. How is that for you? What is your experience with that, and where do you want to go with it?
Totally. Well, I think, luckily nobody tells you if they hate it. So, it's never fun getting negative feedback. And luckily people don't give that kind of feedback. Usually if I run into somebody at a party, they say, oh, I saw your piece at whatever and I loved it. And who knows if they did or not, but I like to believe that they loved it and it makes me feel good. So far my experience of putting stuff out there has been really good. And fun. And I'm like so happy that somebody would put it on their wall and grateful. And so I love that. And I think my goal is like to keep it going. I think that it's work to have to create relationships with galleries and you're like, hey, like, do you have anything going on? I'd love to show my work or art fairs. There's a lot of like phone calls and emails and things that go into that. And so I think my goal is to make the time to keep that going. And the more that your stuff is up, the more people come to you and say, oh, somebody in my book club, whatever, said, oh, my son, I'd like to do a portrait of him. Would you like to do it? And so
Yeah,
that's how you get work, right? So yeah.
very good, very good. Where do you see your art going next? Do you have any new projects you're working on when you look at, like, say, the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah. Well, I mean, as I was sort of telling you before this call, I did a 4-part piece It's really a beautiful story. This is somebody that I know. Um, when my mother graduated from the School of Public Health at UMass, she met a priest and a doctor, I think, at a conference, and the three of them decided to start this free clinic in Idaho serving farm workers, immigrant farm workers, and it was like the first free clinic in Idaho, I think. And not too long after they started it, there was a plane crash, and the priest was killed. And so they kept the clinic going and they've expanded it and it's successful. But I think there's always this like piece of sadness kind of associated with it. So anyway, I got a call from the son of the doctor that had started it, who's now deceased. And he said, listen, I'd like to do a portrait series of the priest, this guy named Terry Riley, and Bob, who was killed in he's a cyclist and the car hit him and killed him, and this other man that was associated with it. And so anyway, I did this 4-part series and I packaged it up. And of course it was late because like I packaged it up finally and I gave it to UPS and I never arrived. So what I'm working on over the next couple of months is trying to redo that series. And
Wow.
and then a couple other portraits down the road, but always looking for more stuff to paint, more people to paint.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story, and it's a beautiful story and also very tragic and sad. And at the same time, here you are, here you are going back into it. You're going to do a redo.
They're going to
And
be better. I told myself. Yeah.
so how are they going to be different? I mean, it's almost like now you look at it as, oh, the previous work I did was just a draft to get me now to do a whole nother series. I mean, that's kind of like a wild experience to have to go through and redo a whole process. Do you look at it differently now? Do you have different ideas of how you would generate?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really fun because these are old, grainy black and whites. And that is not an ideal place to be working from when you're doing like this really colorful portraiture. And so it's been really fun to try to bring color into these old black and whites and bring detail that like wasn't even in the picture, right? And so I think that just trying to like perfect that is its own exercise has been one thing. And then the other thing is I've been this is like a craft piece, right? But like in the past, I painted the picture and then deckled the edges, meaning you tear the edges so that it has this kind of like nice raw, rough thing. And sometimes that tears wrong, or, like I'm going to deckle first on this one and then paint on that so that I get the sort of borders more where I want them.
Mhm.
I know those are kind of silly things, but like I think those are pieces that I'm going to just do a little bit differently this time.
Yeah, I mean, as an artist, we look back and go, "Oh, that would be one thing I would change." And now you have an opportunity to change that, and the edges of the paper obviously like create a container for the painting.
One was
And
like off center by the time anyway, so
yeah,
these are gonna
great.
be improved, yes.
Very good, very good. Tell me, Sari, why do you see, we have a pretty crazy world right now, a lot of stuff going on. How does art fit into this, our place? How is it helpful to humanity? What is your perspective on that?
Sure. Well, it might be a little bit arrogant for me to say that, like, if I weren't painting portraits that, the world would be a worse place, but I think there is a really important place for art, and this is sort of driven home. I'm reading this, memoir about Iran in the late 1970s. And I mean, you can point to many, many societies where this has been the case, but you have a very free and open society. There's satirical newspapers, there's, whatever kind of art you want to create. And having a society where you can just create art of any kind, we take for granted, but really it is a reflection of so much more, right? Like having a free society, having an open society is a reflection of the way that people are able to express themselves and be free and not be like
Yeah.
tortured in prison, right? So just the fact that you can create any kind of art you want is so critical, I think, in any kind of society. And I think there's just a beauty component. Like, how important is it to be able to create beauty, whether that's music or film or art? Like, it just enriches our lives, and I think on some level, like, is kind of a language of the soul, right? Like, I think it was Rambam or somebody in like the 11th century or 12th century that first, I first read like, hey, like the soul delights in beauty. Like there is something about us that can not express in language what we can interpret and express through song, through amazing poetry, through color and figure and drawing and abstract art. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but it's a question that I think a lot of people have been trying to answer for many years. Why is art important? And we just kind of instinctively know that it is.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think society would be definitely very different if we didn't have poetry and music and film and art to, like you said, to express in so many different modalities. And that's, yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. That's why I love talking with artists from around the country and talking with yourself and getting to see your art grow, because it does kind of inspire. It fills us up and gives us like a muse, and it gives us kind of a backdrop to kind of counterbalance something we may have just read or seen, or just what's going on in our lives. So yeah, I think what you said was very spot on, very spot on. Where can people see your art right now?
Right now, I have some
Locally in
pieces.
Telluride or online? Like where can people find work from Sari Levy?
Well, SariLevy.com. Luckily, I have
SariLevy.com.
a very unusual name. And then I have some pieces hanging right now in the HQ gallery in Telluride. So
All right.
that's where it's at.
That's where it's at. Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds wonderful. Anything else you'd like to talk about with your work, or any other piece of art that you'd like to pull out and tell us a little bit more about that's got a story that's, got some interesting part to it that would help us to better get more clarity and more understanding of what you've been working on?
I feel like this is a great place to leave it. I think if anybody wants to get a hold of me, Sari B. Levy at Gmail, happy to talk. And I just really appreciate this opportunity. So thank you so much.
Yeah, SariLevy.com.
Mhm.
Sari, great to have you here. Thanks for doing what you're doing with the community,
You
and
too.
thanks for making the work that is giving inspiration and beauty. Appreciate
I
it.
would say the same to you. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Cool. Well, I just want to say thank you everyone for watching another interview with artists, something that fills me up and I want to keep on doing. And it's an extreme pleasure to talk with people that now I'm inspired to make my work more and to go out in the world and see a little more light. So that's an extremely positive thing. Thank you, Sari, very much.
All right. Thank you.